Hello, everybody. You're welcome to Just for Women Africa, and my name is Olaleko Amoso, the founder of Just for Women Africa. And today on the show, we have with us Amaka Okoye. Amaka is a journalist. She used to work with Arise TV, and now she's the West Africa's correspondent for Deutsche Welle TV in Germany. She'll be talking to us about her journey as a journalist, interesting stories she's covered, sad stories she's covered, and anything that comes up during the conversation. So stick around, and we'll be right back. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Just for Women Africa. We have with us Amaka all the way in Lagos. Hello, Amaka. You're welcome to Just for Women Africa.
Hi, Lekon. Thank you for having me, Lekon.
You're welcome, Amaka. Amaka, first of all, how does it feel being on the other side of the table, being interviewed? I know you've done a lot of interviews over your lifetime.
I suppose it's interesting to also find myself at this other side, and to respond to questions and to be interviewed. I want to say it's also a privilege to have the time to share my story. Every time I get to do this, I say it's really an honor to be able to be on this side of the table and, share my story and my journey so far. So thank you.
All right, that's nice. Okay, Amaka, could you tell us about your journey into being a journalist? How did it start? Did you always want to be a journalist?
So I think starting off, I didn't want to be a journalist. Growing up, I thought it was cool to be a lawyer. So I wanted to be a lawyer, and in my family, I'm the last child, and there's this thing of last borns liking or loving to argue and making their point all the time. And I usually just get into arguments with my elder siblings, and I thought to myself, oh, you argue a lot, and maybe I should just consider being a lawyer. And I love the idea of wearing the robes, and just being called a barrister or something. But of course, over time, that's changed. Even though when I took the first and last time I took the JAM, the Joint Admission Matriculation Board examination in Nigeria, my first and second and third choices were civil law. But I mean, something else happened and I didn't have to pursue that. I got a scholarship, so I had to forget about that and left Nigeria. But of course, between the time that I wrote the exams and just the moment of reflection and asking myself, really, what do I want to be and why do I really want to be a lawyer? I also realized that I had the flair for, telling stories. I could go out during the day and something happens and then I'm telling the story and it comes really out naturally and easy and simple, and I'm able to articulate what I want to say. If I'm describing the scene, I have the pictures, I have the words that makes it so real. And I thought, well, maybe this is my calling, to be a journalist and even tell stories. And so I switched to doing social communications, which in this part of Nigeria, I think it's called mass communication, but in my school, it's called social communication. And my major actually was radio. And so sort of in radio, and then I moved to print very briefly. And then I came into television and I've been, on television doing, moving as a producer, as an anchor, presenter of a show, and now as a correspondent for Deutsche Welle, as you mentioned. And it's been an interesting journey, I must say. And I think that I'm happy that I am in my space. I tend to think that if I ended up a lawyer, I would have been maybe a brilliant lawyer, but I'm not sure I would have been a fulfilled lawyer. So I'm happy that I was able to reroute and then find myself where I am now. And it's an interesting place really to be personally speaking, based on my journey and the career path as well.
Yeah, interesting story. Okay, Amaka, could you tell us, you're a journalist and you're a woman. I interview a lot of women around Africa, and one thing that keeps on coming up is the fact that women are not taken seriously. In the journalism field which you're in, do you face that same challenge that as a woman, you need to work as, 10 times harder as a man is, to make a point or to show that, yes, you can actually do the job?
First of all, I want to say that if anyone is not taking a woman serious, it's that person's loss, So the idea of not taking women seriously, I think maybe that's quite archaic and that's ancient. And then if anybody is in that position, it's really a shame. In terms of my work, do I have to work twice as hard? One of the things I believe as a person is not to continue to push the narrative that is changing, but to focus on the change that we're seeing. Essentially, I'm trying to say that, yes, there is the belief, and yes, in some cases, women have to work twice as hard. But I think that with the incredible women that I know that I've come across in different fields, women are taking their place almost naturally, right? And changing the stereotypes and really challenging that, such that, you know, you just have to see the work yourself. We don't have to now prove to you. You see the work yourself. And I'll give you a quick example. In my former employment before I joined Deutsche Welle, I was covering conflict. And, you know, the first time, I suppose my editors would have had a bit of concerns because it was quite a volatile area. And we were supposed to go in there and come back perhaps after 2 days, but we spent 13 days. You know, it was the abduction in Nigeria at the time. And so we did, and when I say we, I mean myself and the camera guy, we did shocker to most people, because at the time I was only 9 days in employment. I've not even known some of my colleagues. And some people probably would have been saying, who is this new girl who's joined us and doing all of this? And almost, you know, I think it was 2 or 3 months after, there was another abduction, and there were so many abductions that happened, you know, and I had to cover each of them back to back and covering them from on ground, literally. And after the first and the second one, I didn't need to prove to anybody. It was almost automatic that when it happened, I was the person to call. Look, you have to go to Zamfara. Look, you're going into Chibok. Look, you're going into Kaduna. You're going to all of these places. So I think that we are at a place where people are also realizing that what they thought before is not the correct place. And that where we are now is where we are actually seeing women in different fields doing different things. We're seeing women who are in engineering, we're seeing women who are in politics. Though we've not seen so much of them, we've seen economists, we've seen, you know, women in top positions, CEOs in banks, etc., etc. So yes, in time past, maybe people would think that you need to work so hard to prove yourself. I'm not saying that is not happening, but I think that there is a major shift, and we shouldn't remain in that place where we think, oh, you know, women don't achieve things. We are in a place where women are continuously and steadily and consistently showing the way through their works, you know, and their works speaking strongly and massively for themselves. And so when people ask me stuff like that, like, oh, how are you doing this as a woman? I say that competence is not gender-based. If you're good at what you're doing, you're good at what you're doing. And that's excellence. And excellence doesn't know a she or he or whatever else anyone identifies as. Excellence is excellence. If you're excellent at doing this, you're excellent at doing that. And that's really that's my focus, you know, because I believe that we need to pursue excellence. And because I am always aiming for excellence, I don't see any reason why being a woman would stop me from achieving. And I think that's where we are today, you know, as women. I tend to think that many women will agree with me that that's where we are, or where we're strongly heading and positioning ourselves as well.
Could you just tell us in brief exactly what do you exactly do for Deutsche Welle?
So for Deutsche Welle, I work as a West Africa correspondent. So we have correspondents in different parts of the world. As you do know, Deutsche Welle is a German international broadcaster. And so the headquarters is in Germany, in Berlin, as you do know. And then we now work as West Africa correspondent. My role is to cover the continent, you know, the region of West Africa. We have correspondents in East Africa, in the southern part of Africa, but I cover West Africa, which means the countries that are in West Africa: Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, you know, and all of those.
Over the years as a journalist, what story have you covered that that you thought that was really interesting, and that your quiet moments when you think about it, that story is always always comes to mind?
I mean, yeah, I was just speaking with someone, I think it was last week or I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, I don't remember. And this question came up. And I said that there are a couple of stories that come to mind. I suppose because I've covered so much of conflicts, I've covered so much of human suffering, really, and human angle stories. So for me, usually, the stories that come to mind are stories that are in that area, so to say. So the first one that will come to my mind will be Chibok. One of the Chibok girls that I interviewed in 2021, I believe, it's 2021. She was one of those that escaped, and she came back with a child, and she was dealing with stigma at the time when I met her, rejection from community, community. She was like a reminder to the community of the attack, the whole Boko Haram experience, and having a child also from quote unquote a terrorist was also very difficult for her, because even the community would always refer to her as the woman that came back with a child of a terrorist. Her child almost did not have a name, and she was dealing with all of that. And coupled with that, she had not gone back to school because she feels like, why do I need to go back to school? It was in school that she was kidnapped, where she thought she was going to seek knowledge and get a better life. That's where she was kidnapped, and everything kind of descended into chaos for her in terms of her life. But part of what I was supposed to do then was to speak to people like her, returnees, to just share their stories. And there were 3 of them that I interviewed, 3 returnees. But particularly herself, when I was done, she asked if she could get my contact and if she could stay in touch. And I was happy to, and I said, sure. And we exchanged contacts. And then 6 months or maybe 8 months thereabout later, I would get a text message from her one morning saying, I am back to school. I'm going back to the university, and I want to do communication. I want to become a journalist because I want to tell our stories. And I felt completely emotional and overwhelmed because I did not know that short meeting I had with her in Chibok was life-changing. Because she said it was after meeting you and after the interview that I felt like I could actually pick up my life and I could do what you're doing, which is really telling our own story. And I tell you, Lekon, nobody else can tell their story more than them or better than them. Much as I'm a journalist, I'm a great storyteller, I go to these places, I have the experience. It is different from somebody like her who's had the experience. She would tell the story from a place of knowing, from lived experience, from context and perspective, everything. It would be so rich. And I felt that I felt so, what's the word to use? Fulfilled, that a light, something sparked in her mind, and she thought she could go back to school. And as we speak today, she's in one of the best schools, the American University of Nigeria, the one in Yola. And she is also now, practicing and learning hands-on Johnson. She can use the video, she can use the audio, she can film, she can do basically everything. And I think that that's something very, very important, because she's no more that girl who was kidnapped by terrorists, whose light was almost snuffed out of her. She's now this person who has a future, and not just only for herself, but for her son, Aliyu, whom she's now also enrolled, and he's also going to school. So I think that's one that is very major for me. I think that that's one of the biggest stories, really, in terms of impact and tangible impact. I also think that another person that comes to mind is the story of Ayo. Ayo was in the military, was in the army, and then at the time he asked a question about weapons and all of that. For some reasons, he was sent to prison, and he was actually sentenced to death. But through the intervention of some lawyers and senior advocates of Nigeria, he got 10 years imprisonment. And then there was, of course, legal aid assistance that he got from NGOs, and he later served for 6 years. And so when I went into Kirikiri maximum and medium prison, and I told his story, took him back there, and he remembered his days while he was there. And then we came out and then went to his home, and he shared the impact of that, how he lost his job, and how it's not been easy for him, and how even though the court ruled that the Nigerian army should give him all his benefits, he's not been able to get that. And the distance that he's been in prison created for him and his family. He had I think his second child also was just barely a few months when he was sent into prison. And by the time he came out as a grown child, and all what that had done to him. And interestingly, that story went viral, and I wasn't expecting that. And he got support from different parts of the world. He got support from Canada. Somebody decided to give scholarship to his daughter for the tuition into university. He got job offers. He got a group of lawyers who decided they want to take up the case again to pursue it pro bono so that he will get his benefits and all of that. And I think that his life changed, because within that interview, he talked about stigmatization and the difficulty to reintegrate back into society. And that kind of opened the eyes of people and moved towards accepting him and allowing him to really get back into society. And today, he's doing well for himself. Yes, he didn't go back to the Nigerian army, and the case is not, of course, I think they're still working on getting his benefits, but his life has changed for the better. And I think that that's our essence as journalists, as storytellers, being able to provide solutions journalism and journalism of social impact, where someone's life literally changes, for good.
All right, Amaka, those are really, really impactful stories. I mean, it's got me wondering. Okay, Amaka, as we bring the interview to a close, could you just summarize for us what is the future for Amaka, and what advice would you give to women out there in Africa who are watching you, who are inspired by you, but feel it's a man's world, and feel like they need money to get to achieve things? What's your advice to women out there?
Okay, so I think that there are many women on whose shoulders I have stood, and those who are my cheerleaders, those who have supported me, and that I continue to look up to them, and they have formed my support tribe. So I think that it's important that women also seek that support tribe and continue to light each other's candles while we live, and support each other and point each other into the ways of growth and opportunities. So where you see there is an opportunity, you remember another sister, remember another woman, because when you're here and you push another sister, another woman to be here, the ladder is growing and we continue to grow. That's one of the things that I will say. The second thing is that we continue to learn. We shouldn't stop learning. I say, when people ask me that, when people say I can't do it, I say, hold on, I'm not going to argue with you. My work is going to sparkle, and you will see that yourself. And I really want to pass on that to others. When people try to talk you down as a woman, really just ignore that and focus on what you're doing. By the time they see your work, they will come back running to you. They'll be the one that say, oh yeah, I knew it. Oh, come on, Amaka, I knew that you're a great person. And so don't listen to the negative thinking and all of that. Focus, and you know what you want to achieve, and you achieve that. For me, every woman is a star, and I'm thinking that it takes one star to recognize one. And if you imagine when you have many stars, we form a galaxy, right? That's how it is when you women come together to, strengthen each other and to support each other. And that's the message I'll be leaving. For me, I am still going, and growing is the target, and learning all the time. Where am I headed? I think I'm still very much in the game. Journalism is changing, and so what I am doing currently, I'm also in a training, is trying to upskill and to see how do I remain relevant in the changing dynamics of the media space. And I think that that's what, not just me, every woman in every field, to always upgrade, to look for what's the next thing to do. What is this next thing that I'm going to do that will position myself for greatness, to continue to position myself so that when greatness comes, it finds me ready. And that's my philosophy. I don't want to be found wanting. And so I always, always, always continue to strive and to move ahead. And that's my wish for every woman, and that we continue to lift each other and to spread the gospel of growth and of success, of one another as well.
All right, Amaka, thank you so much for being with us on the show. We really appreciate it. And we wish you all the best. We look forward to interviewing again in the future.
Thank you so very much for having me, and thank you for the fantastic work you're doing and giving women platform also to share their story. I want to say that that's really incredible, and we appreciate that. I speak on behalf of so many women also as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Amaka. And to our viewers, don't forget to like, subscribe, tell a friend who knows a friend about Just Women Africa. And to the next show from Amaka in Lagos, it will be bye. Bye.
Right.